We're back again. This is the last meeting we'll have in the month of October. And in consideration of the anniversary of President Ikeda's death on November 15th, we're not going to have a meeting in November. Okay? Because it's also our, busy time of year. So it would be perfect. What I would really hope and ask all of you to do, though, is to chant Daimoku for the sake of all living beings. The world is again in a state where we don't know what's going to happen. We could be attacked at any time or in war by 2027. It's really a time of immense importance as it relates to those that have the heart of the Lion King. Okay? So you have to understand that the entire teaching that has been being read to you is that you're already the Buddha exactly as you are. Anybody that think those are words or that they don't quite apply to themselves yet, they're not listening to what's being said. Okay? So, and it's not me saying it, it's Nichiren Daishonin saying it. So if I refer to myself as the Buddha, and based on my life, a Buddha of limitless joy, if you have any question about whether or not that's really the case, as far as I'm concerned, I please don't, because that's slander. Because the teaching already says you don't slander a Buddha. And if I've come to the 6th stage realization that I am one, and when I declare it for the sake of trying to share that reality with other people, you either don't get it or you attack me for it. You create causes that are already qualified as being circumstances that will bring you suffering. So protect yourself by not having those kinds of thoughts, because you're making distinctions and you're not qualified to. Okay, I'm going to start by, hang on, where's the big thing here? Okay, no, that's Nichimoku. Here we go. Going first of all into the essential nature of phenomena. Okay, it's on page 166 of the dictionary. It says essential nature of dharma, essential nature of phenomena, also dharma nature. Now we've been talking about the dharma nature because we're talking about Shakyamuni teaching that this being expressed to us for the latter day by the Daishonin. That's what this orally transmitted teachings is. Okay, it's based on what's being said in the Lotus Sutra. Okay, it says also dharma nature. Okay, so the essential nature of phenomena is the dharma nature. All right, and the unchanging nature inherent in all things and all phenomena. It is a concept equal to the true aspect of all phenomena, or the true aspect of reality. This is the way things are, whether you can perceive it or not. This is the teaching that tells you. So belief and understanding kicks in right here. If you don't believe what this is saying, you can't possibly understand it. I can read it over and over again and you will still miss the point. And really what I want to get across today before we're going to read chapter 13 and 14. We're done with the theoretical first half of the Lotus Sutra as of the end of this meeting. Okay? You please understand this definition. In Buddhism, the term dharma means both phenomena, both the body and mind, and the truth underlying them. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Okay? A Buddha is defined as one who is enlightened to the essential nature of phenomena. Okay? That's all. And an ordinary person is one who is ignorant of this nature, which can also happen from you not listening to what's being said and thinking it doesn't apply to you yet. All right? Hence, both enlightenment and ignorance or darkness originate from one source, the essential nature of phenomena, which is the original state. It's Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay? I'm going to go here to the essential teaching real quick because it's just across the page. Also, original teaching. The teaching expounded by Shakyamuni from the perspective of his true identity as the Buddha who attained enlightenment countless kalpas ago, which doesn't apply to us. We're in the latter day of the law. Let me jump over to Nichiren's definition of the essential teaching, which is the essential teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay, and to understand that essential teaching, he's left us this synopsis to perceive the essential teaching of the latter day in the teachings that preceded it in the Lotus Sutra. Okay, it's point 2 on page 168. It says, in his writings, Nichiren sometimes uses the term essential teaching to indicate the essential teaching of the latter day of the law. That is the teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The object of devotion for observing the mind reads the essential teaching of Shakyamuni's lifetime, and that revealed by Nichiren at the beginning of the latter day, are both pure and perfect, and that both lead directly to Buddhahood, but they're for different ages and different entities that manifest during those ages. All right. Shakyamuni's, however, is the Buddhas of the harvest, and this that Aishonin says, this is all in quotations, is the Buddhism of sowing. The core of his teaching is the 1 chapter and 2 halves, which we've read at least a half a dozen times. And the core of mine is the 5 characters of the Daimoku, alone. Alone. Okay, there's nothing more to the teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Now, there's a lot to understand, help you understand it. But in essence, it is the essence. So it doesn't have a lot of other gobbledygook attached to it. You can be a dragon girl. You can be anybody, and in a single moment of life, realize that your essential nature, okay, as a living entity, as a temporary gathering of the 5 components. The difference of, that difference pales, the difference between the theoretical and the essential teaching is as great as that between heaven and earth. Nevertheless, even the difference between the doctrines of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life of the theoretical teaching and that of the essential teaching pales into insignificance. So it says basically the teaching that's in the Lotus Sutra doesn't compare at all to the teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay? The difference pales into significance when it is compared with the difference between the essential teaching that is the latter half of the Lotus Sutra, which we're going to start in December. Okay, that's why I'm kind of happy today. We're 13 and 14. We're done with the theoretical teaching, which really, again, is not meant for us because we're bodhisattvas of the earth and we're going to pop out of the earth in chapter 16. He says, okay, that difference pales into when compared to the difference between the essential teaching, and that is the latter half of the Lotus Sutra, and the essential teaching revealed by Nichiren at the beginning of the latter day of the law, or Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Hence, he termed his essential teaching the unique essential teaching, and explains it completely fully on the mystic principle of true cause, a writing that gave he gave his immediate successor Nico, okay, that hasn't been translated into English yet, but I understand from my friend that I talked about this before, that it's in the process of being translated. So let's go to first where am I as far as the encouraging devotion chapter? Hang on. I somehow blew that. Here it is. Hang on. Just give me a moment. Encouraging devotion, where are you? Expedient means chapter. Encouraging devotion. Excuse me, I didn't have it marked and I thought I did. On page 158, encouraging devotion chapter, the 13th chapter of the Lotus Sutra. In the beginning of the chapter, Bodhisattva Medicine King and his retinue of 20,000 bodhisattvas make a vow before Shakyamuni Buddha to propagate the Lotus Sutra in the Sahe world after his death. Meanwhile, a vow of propagation in other worlds is made by 500 arhats who have received a prophecy of enlightenment and by 8,000 other voice hearers, some still learning and others and others with nothing more to learn. Shakyamuni then bestows a prophecy of enlightenment on Maheprajapati, his maternal aunt, and Yashodhara, who was his wife before he renounced the secular world. These two and their retinue of 6,000 nuns also vow to spread the Lotus Sutra after the Buddha's death. Then 800,000 million Nayutas of bodhisattvas make a vow to teach the sutra in the frightful evil age after the Buddha's death. Their vow is stated in verse form and is often referred to as the 20-line verse of the Encouraging Devotion chapter, which we've read several times, but I'll go over it again in a moment. It enumerates the types of persecutions that will be met by propagating the Lotus Sutra in the latter age. In the latter age. So again, encouraging devotion is for us, not peaceful practices. Okay? Biolo of China later summarized these persecutions and their perpetrators as the three kinds of enemies, or the three powerful enemies, and the three kinds of arrogance or presumptive, three kinds of arrogance and presumption. And then let me jump back over here to peaceful practices, since we'll be going straight into that. The 14th chapter of the Lotus Sutra and the last chapter of the theoretical first half of the Lotus Sutra of the Sutra. In response to a question from Bodhisattva Manjushri about how bodhisattvas should practice Buddhism in the evil age after Shakyamuni Buddha's death, the Buddha expounds 4 rules of peaceful practices to be observed. While the sutra's description of these 4 practices are rather lengthy, Tentai summarized them as the peaceful practice of the body, the peaceful practice of the mouth, the peaceful practice of the mind, and the peaceful practice of vows. Tentai regarded these 4 peaceful practices as development of the 3 rules of preaching described in the Teacher of the Law 10th chapter. The Peaceful Practices chapter also contains the parable of the bright jewel in the top knot. In the parable, a great wheel-turning king rewards his soldiers who have shown merit in battle with a variety of treasures, but withholds a bright jewel that he keeps in his top knot. Only when he sees someone who has achieved particularly great distinction does he remove the jewel and give it to that person. The Buddha is likened to the king. The soldiers of merit are his disciples, and the ordinary treasures he gives away are the provisional or pre-Lotus Sutra teachings. Well, obviously, we know what the great jewel is. It's the essential teaching. Of these great distinctions, those of great distinction represent his disciples who have developed their capacity through the provisional teachings and are now ready to receive the supreme teaching. The bright jewel in the top knot is the Buddha's highest teaching, the Lotus Sutra, which the Buddha has withheld until last. The Sanskrit title of this chapter is Sukhavihara, which means an easy, comfortable, or peaceful life, okay, which we enjoy through taking on the 3 powerful enemies, right? And the 3 devils and the 3 obstacles and the 4 devils that coincide with the attainment of Buddhahood. All right. I will now leave Nichimoku open. I'm going to go straight to the now. I'm going to go, first of all, I've got a friend named Karen. And Karen was very kind last week. Give me just a minute. I'm going to make sure that her question has been answered. I've answered it, but I didn't get a specific response from her, so I wasn't quite sure if she had actually understood what I was saying. So I apologize. I don't know if you guys looked at the video from last week. Did you see it at all on YouTube?
No.
Okay, you wouldn't have to because you were here. But I apologized about the F-bomb. I said, sorry, F-bomb alert. I screwed up and got a bit careless with my language. I sincerely meant no offense to Jesus and apologize for that. Please be aware I will give the timestamp when I am able to. Doing this is more difficult than it may seem. And Karen replied this, yeah, I bet you get massive Sancho Shima. I get persecuted a lot by members and non-members over the years, but it's win every time I'm doing a lot of shakabuku, which is most of the time. So good for you, Karen. I definitely get massive Sancho Shima, okay? My life became much more difficult as soon as I decided to take on this task of reading this and being so bold as to give definitive declaratives as to what it's saying. Okay, so below though, then Karen comes back and she says, true disciples of Nichiren or to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo never stop and we never disobey. Which one? This lecture is hard to grasp, not because of you, but I may have to listen to it again. Thank you, though. Very good. And I appreciated that. But again, if you're in a situation where you're asking that question, then you perceive Nichiren and Nam-myoho Renge-kyo as two different things or two separate things. They are not separate. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is not separate from anything. Okay? So my reply was, so good to hear from you, Karen. We never disobey by never stopping. Because we never stop, we never disobey. This is the faith throughout our lifetimes that qualifies us to preach the great pure law, the fifth 500-year period and beyond, as bodhisattvas of the earth, true disciples of the original teacher, expressing our true identities as true Buddhists, preaching the correct teaching for the latter day of the law. It would be a shame if President Ikeda went through all the efforts that he had to over the course of his presidency, okay, and nobody comes out of it understanding that he says over and over again, I've read it now for almost 10 years, that we're already Buddhas exactly as we are, because that is the teaching of Nichiren. So, again, I then added to make it more clear, a true disciple of the true Buddha is to be a disciple of the true cause of the original state of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Does everybody understand what I just said there? They are both the same thing, because Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the great pure law that is inseparable from all things. We just read that it's the entire Dharma realm, okay? You are in my prayers, bowing in humble obeisance. You bet above is very correct when she said, I bet you get massive Sancho Shima. Thank you, sister. Let's keep kicking devil ass, never stopping. Okay, so before I go into this, then I got a bunch of stuff from the dictionary for my own convenience. I'm just going to read as I pulled them up, as I thought about looking them up to give you those definitions as we go along. Okay, the first one is that comes from all the 28, it comes from the OTT. All the 28 chapters of the Lotus Sutra are Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Why? Because everything is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, okay? All right, he says, the record of the orally transmitted teachings says this sutra as a whole refers to the 28 chapters of the Lotus Sutra, the essential teaching and the theoretical teaching. These four phrases refers to the four principles of name, function, essence, and quality, which help define or are the representative of the karma that we manifest as a temporary gathering of the five components. We don't have a name when we go back into Ku, right? I quit being Tom because I've been disassembled, okay? And my five components have all been shined up because of all the efforts I've made for preaching and teaching, okay? Or not, if I haven't, okay? The essence of the sutra refers to the five characters of the Daimoku. I think that's, anytime you hear essence, you're talking about the original state. It can only be one thing, all right? Hand it on to others means handing it to the Bodhisattva's superior practices. It refers to Myoho Renge-kyo. This passage of the commentary is perfectly clear. Now when Nichiren and his followers propagate Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, this is the principle of essence or heart. The 28 chapters of the Lotus Sutra are the principle of function. The recitation of any of the 28 chapters is a supplementary practice. Just like we call Gongyo is like a supplementary practice. That's a recitation of any of the 28 chapters. In the latter day of the law, it's not the correct way to spend your time. You shouldn't be chanting the Lotus Sutra.
No.
You shouldn't be, you should study the Lotus Sutra enough that you understand what the orally transmitted teachings are saying, but the latter day of the law is not based on the Lotus Sutra. It's based on the teaching, the essential teaching of Nichiren. Okay? So it says the 28 chapters of the Lotus Sutra are the principle of function. The recitation of any of the 28 chapters is a supplementary practice, while the recitation of the Daimoku is the main practice. That's why I do that for hours a day rather than doing anything that has anything to do with the Lotus Sutra itself. The 28 chapters Lotus Sutra I'm talking about. The supplementary practice is included within the main practice. So what he's saying there is that by every time you chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, it's the equivalent of reciting the whole Lotus Sutra multiple times. I believe it's either hundreds or 100 or 1,000 times. There's no comparison. Why would you focus on the Lotus Sutra instead of chant Daimoku? It's the reason common mortals can become Buddhas in their present form. Without this empowerment, without this shortcut, it's impossible. That's why it doesn't occur any other time or with anyone else other than the disciples of Nichiren in the latter day when Nam-myoho Renge-kyo has occurred. Okay, then that's the first definition. The Dharma body, again, can be confusing because it's thrown around with a Dharma body. What is it really, though? Also, the body of the law. Okay, the body of the law. Now, we already know that mind and body cannot be separated, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so because we have a body, the mind, the core of the mind, or the mind king, becomes awakened. What is its essence? What's its essential nature? It's the essential nature of all things. It's Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, okay? So, the Dharma body, also the body of the law, that's our bodies when we've become hip to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, allowing us to be right now Buddhas exactly as we are. We don't have to perfect shit. If we have the faith, we will, it's a belief and understanding issue. If you believe this, you can understand it. If you don't believe it, you can look for all the references to qualify it in a way that satisfies you, and you'll never get anywhere doing that. That's not the point. The point is to hurry up and be Buddhists as fast as we can so that we can show that aspect to others, that it's also a single moment of life for them. It's a matter of understanding and believing the teaching. Who said this stuff? Nichiren Daishonin.
Yes.
If you don't believe it, you're slandering the Buddha of the latter day. Okay? You're saying, well, I'm not sure if you're right about that. Okay, I don't dare do that. That's why I take it so literally and then I let it come out of my mouth. so literally because I'm not afraid to do that. All right? It says, also body of the law. The Dharma or Dharmakaya means law, and Kaya, body. One of the three bodies, the Dharma body, okay, that Nam Myoho Renge Kyo Mind King, the reward body, the brain, the mind that allows me to think about that and discern it in relationship to the teaching, okay, and the manifested body, which I can't do anything without. It serves the law as a vehicle for my mind king and my reward body to be able to convey what I have to teach as the Buddha. Okay? Am I getting too heavy here?
No.
Okay, this is straight. I'm going to be shooting straight the whole way here because we're going into the essential teaching, last 14 chapters, and you better be with it before we start that because there are a lot of declaratives there that are going to go, what? If you haven't read them before. The Dharma body means the essence of Buddhahood. Okay? The Dharma body means the essence of Buddhahood. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, because where does outside of our own bodies there is no Buddha. He just made that declarative in the last chapter. That's why the Devadatta chapter, if you can believe these counterintuitive elements that are being spoken of here, then you're definitely assured supreme perfect enlightenment. Okay? All right? The Dharma body means the essence of Buddhahood, the ultimate truth or law, and the true nature of the Buddha's life, which is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. It also means a Buddha per se, whose body is the law itself, because once I realize I am the Buddha, I become one with Nam Myoho Renge Kyo just as I've always been, but now as the Buddha, okay, of the Dharma body, okay, because Dharma body, wisdom and emancipation, that's what I turned the three poisons in from, right? That's what we just studied last week. I flipped all that bad stuff, and from delusion to enlightenment. And now I get the benefit of that effort.
Yes.
Okay? Then you don't have to go to the Gohonzon and beg for benefits. Then you understand. You go to the Gohonzon and you say, I need this.
Yes.
You don't beg anymore. You're the Buddha. You are, according to the last chapter, you're equal to the original teacher. You are a Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, thus come one, because you perceive the true nature of all things. You perceive the true nature of the Dharma realm. It's all Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, the original state. Okay? Okay, so then it also means a Buddha per se whose body is the law itself. Again, they can't be separated, so you can never look at them as like Nichiren or Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. That's not perceiving that correctly. A Buddha is of this kind is referred to as the Buddha of the Dharma body, or the Buddha in his body of the law. Also see the three bodies, okay? Which we also know are the three bodies, the eternally manifested three bodies, okay? Next, what do I have here? Okay, that's on potassium shortage. This is, okay. As a supplement, this always blows my mind because, again, I subscribe to John Scobie from, I don't know if John is from the UK, and I don't know if he does this from the UK or if he does it from Japan, but he's a very cool guy. I've been following him for at least 20 years. What he does is he gives continuous Gosho bits, okay, and then continuous statements by President Keita of substantiation. But I'll get into what President Keita said. Here's what he's got though. From the real aspect of the Gohonzon on page 832 of volume 1 of the writings of Nichiren Daishonin. Never seek this Gohonzon outside yourself. Okay? So if you're looking at the piece of paper and praying for it to answer your prayers, you do not understand what it actually is. It's a mirror, okay, of your Dharma nature, okay? The Gohonzon exists only within the mortal flesh of us ordinary people who embrace the Lotus Sutra and chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Okay, so you have to, that means that you embrace the Lotus Sutra, but you embrace it as a provisional teaching. You embrace it as a Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, thus come one. A Buddha that perceives everything that the Lotus Sutra's already got in it, but perceiving it correctly for the sake of those in the latter day, in the latter age. The daily encouragement that he has here is drawing forth the life state of Buddhahood by chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. This is from President Ikeda. We can break through our individual karma and achieve the fundamental transformation of our lives known as attaining Buddhahood. So President Ikeda is saying if we do this, we can attain Buddhahood. Okay? Not only that, we can enact the ultimate drama of transformation based on the principle of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, by which we can realize happiness for both ourselves and others and contribute to creating a prosperous society and a peaceful world, which is what I just had said when we chant this month about, or next month, about President Ikeda and the anniversary of his passing. Let's pray for the whole world. Because right now, the whole world's watching. It's not just guys, it's not just us around the table. Sometimes I forget those cameras are even there. But it's really the whole world. We're connected to all kinds of other bodhisattvas of the earth. And they constantly always say, when they thank me, they thank all of you. And it's because in reality, it's because of you that I'm talking. Okay? So if you're getting anything out of what I'm saying, the appreciation I have is to you, because I wouldn't be saying it if it weren't for you. Okay? Good friend. We know what a good friend is, right? Okay? As opposed to a evil friend or a bad friend. Okay, good friend. Also good companion. One who leads others to the correct teaching or helps them in their practice of the correct teaching. In this sense, good friend may be also called a good teacher. A good friend is contrasted with an evil friend who leads people away from the way of Buddhist practice and into the evil path, that is, into suffering. Buddhism teaches that in pursuing the way to enlightenment, one should associate with a good friend to strengthen one's faith and practice. But to show you the contrast of what that good friend, if that good friend is a good friend, if they make you go chant because you don't like them and you suddenly perceive the true nature of their life. Okay? So it's not just a good friend's got his arm around, let's go have a beer, bro. I got to talk to you about some stuff. No. It's the aspects of your karma that bring things and put them in your face that make you go to the Gohonzon and draw forth the wisdom that already exists in your life. Okay? So he says, a good friend is contrasted with an evil friend who leads people away from the way of the Buddhist practice and into evil paths, that is, into suffering. Buddhism teaches that in pursuing the way of enlightenment, one should associate with a good friend to strengthen one's faith and practice. In the Devadatta chapter of the Lotus Sutra, which we just read, Shakyamuni Buddha describes Devadatta, who tried to kill him, in his life as Shakyamuni, as a good friend who in a past life instructed him in the Lotus Sutra. That's the seer that he served for 1,000 years as a king. Okay, that we were talking about as we were going through that chapter. Shakyamuni states that it is therefore because of Devadatta, he was able to attain enlightenment and save living beings. In other words, there are influences that trigger us bringing out our essential nature and our true identity. Okay? So they're good friends as long as the essential nature comes out, and they're evil friends if they pull us away from that truth. Okay? Regardless of the feelings that we have at that moment. The King Wonderful Adornment from the 28th chapter, which we haven't gotten to yet, of the sutra describes the two brothers, Pure Storehouse and Pure Eye, as good friends to their father, King Wonderful Adornment, because they converted their father to the correct teaching. This chapter defines a good friend as the great cause and condition. The great cause and condition. A good friend is the great cause and condition by which one is guided and led, and which enables one to see the Buddha and to conceive the desire for supreme perfect enlightenment. Okay? Next, Kuan Ganjo. This is once again the inseparability of the person and the law. Literally all of us, right? Because what is our original state? The law. Okay? So this exists from before we begin practicing, regardless of who we are, even if we're evil. Okay? There isn't a one, the Daishonin said, that's not in actuality a bodhisattva of the earth. He says, of all people born, there in actuality isn't a single one that isn't in fact a bodhisattva of the earth, because they all contain the essential nature of the Dharma body. They all contain Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay, Kuan Ganjo, which is Nichiren's teaching instead of numberless major world system dust particle kalpas of Shakyamuni's teaching. Okay, the Buddhism of harvest versus the Buddhism of sowing. Kuan is from the Buddhism of sowing. It's for the latter day. It's over the head of the people that were alive during the former and the middle day. Literally, Kuan means the remote past, and Ganjo, beginning or foundation. Once again, this term appears in On the Mystic Principle of the True Cause, a work written by Nichiren in 1282, just before he died at the hot springs, that he gave to Nikko Shonin in IKKO. That's why the other schools are not aware of these concepts. Okay, this work refers to the mystic law, uncreated and eternal, that can only be Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the original state, of the Buddha of beginningless time, Kuan Ganjo, and states that the mystic law lies in the depths of the lifespan 16th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, which we're going to be doing in December, the month that I turn 71. You know, I'm in the death decade now, guys, so I could just like drop dead anytime. And that's cool, because if I drop dead being like Nichimoku, I'll start crying even thinking about it. That's my goal. And states that the mystic law lies in the depths of the lifespan chapter of the Lotus Sutra. Nichiren interprets Kuan Ganjo on two different levels. One, in the context of the lifespan chapter, Kuan refers to the remote past when Shakyamuni originally attained enlightenment, numberless major world system dust particle kalpas ago. And Ganjo to the foundation of his original enlightenment at that time, because he attained enlightenment. It's not the original state that he's talking about. It's something that he got taught. Don't forget, he got taught by a great universal wisdom excellence, his father, when he was one of the 16 sons. There's Burning Torch. There's all kinds of people that already know this Lotus Sutra, but it must be a different context because they're in the Lotus Sutra that we're reading. So again, this is the region from the region of the unfathomable, because everything I'm saying is almost impossible to believe logically. It's really an issue of faith. It's really an issue of faith. It can be explained in such a way so that it makes so much sense that it's more easily believed, but it's counterintuitive. If you don't understand the teaching, you can't really explain it that way. That's why we read the Gosho. That's why we study. That's why that's part of the three things we're supposed to do: faith, practice, and study. Without study, none of it happens in reality. You're just looking for an easier life. And that's not the idea. We get that as a reward for not looking for the easier life, but looking to propagate the law in the latter day and being willing to not begrudge our lives in doing so. All right? Nichiren interprets, on two items. One's for the sake of Shakyamuni and the Lotus Sutra, but in the record of the orally transmitted teachings, Nichiren's oral teaching on the Lotus Sutra compiled by Nikko in 1278, it is stated, Kuan means something that was not worked for, that was not improved upon, but that exists just as it always has. Orally transmitted teachings continues, because we are speaking here of the Buddha eternally endowed with the three bodies. It is not a question of something attained for the first time at a certain time, or of something that was worked for. This is not the kind of Buddhahood that is adorned with the 32 features and 80 characteristic, or that needs to be improved on in any way. It's the Nam-myoho Renge-kyo that's the core of the Mind King. It's the Mind King of our existence. Because this is the eternal and immutable Buddha in his original state, that's what makes us Buddhas. He exists just as he always has. This is what is meant by Kuan. The same section of the orally transmitted teaching concludes, Kuan is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. And true attainment means awakening to the fact that one is eternally endowed with the three bodies. If we're eternally endowed, that means we're also without beginning. Is beginningless time? Kuan Ganjo's beginningless time? We're also beginningless time. We're Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, thus come once. That was the thing that the Daishonin just said in code that I explained to you in the last chapter, or the Treasure Tower. I can't remember which one it was. Kuan is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and true attainment means awakening to the fact that one is eternally endowed with the three bodies. In essence, for Nichiren, Kuan or Kuan Ganjo means the eternal law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and the original state of life that embodies Buddhahood. I always constantly say the original state, the original state, the original state. I'm not saying the whole phrase because my might get crossed up in my mind. But when I say the original state, I am saying the original state of life that embodies Buddhahood. Kuan, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay. Next, the 20-line verse, which is going to be in the Encouraging Devotion chapter. Also 20 lines of verse, or 20-line verse of the Encouraging Devotion chapter, the concluding verse section of the Encouraging Devotion, 13th chapter of Lotus Sutra, in which countless multitudes of bodhisattvas vow to Shakyamuni to propagate the sutra in an evil age after his death. Okay, what happens after they've all vowed? What ultimately occurs? He says, never mind, it's not your job. This section is called the 20-line verse because the Chinese translation consists of 20 lines. The verse section begins with the passage, we beg you not to worry. After the Buddha has passed into extinction in an age of fear and evil, we will preach far and wide. Is that not what we're doing? These verses enumerate the persecutions that will occur in the evil age, which is the latter day of the law, designated in the sutra. Based on these lines from the Encouraging Devotion chapter, Myolo classified those who persecute practitioners of the Lotus Sutra into three types of enemies. Nichiren called them the three powerful enemies. And it often pointed out that no one other than himself had ever experienced all the persecutions predicted in the 20-line verse of the Encouraging Devotion chapter on account of the Lotus Sutra. On that basis, he declared himself to be the votary of the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law. Okay, the Nam-myoho Renge-kyo thus come one, which we'll get to in chapter 16. The three powerful enemies, which is an extrapolation of Nichiren's from what I just told you Myolo came up with, from the 20-line verse. Also, the three types of enemies, three types of arrogant people who persecute those who propagate the Lotus Sutra in the evil age after Shakyamuni's death. Myolo defines him in his work, The Annotations on the Words and Phrases of the Lotus Sutra, on the basis of the descriptions in the concluding verse section of the Encouraging Devotion, 13th chapter, we're about ready to get to, in the Lotus Sutra. In the Sutra text, the first type is described as follows. There will be many ignorant people who will curse and speak ill of us and will attack us with swords and staves. We don't be afraid of anybody. That's coming. When people curse or speak ill of you, laugh and say, boy, I feel sorry for you. You just slandered a Buddha. The second type, in the evil age, there will be monks with perverse wisdom and hearts that are fawning and crooked, who will suppose they have attained what they have not attained, being proud and boastful in heart. Those that think that they have the ability to judge other people's faith, in my opinion. And the third type, or there will be forest-dwelling monks wearing clothing of patched rags and living in retirement, who will claim they are practicing the true way, despising and looking down on all humankind. Greedy for profit and support, they will preach the law to white-robed laymen and will be respected and revered by the world as though they were arhats who possess the six transcendental powers. Myolo summarizes these three as follows. The arrogance and presumption of lay people, or arrogant lay people, a reference to those ignorant of Buddhism who curse and speak ill of the practitioners of the Lotus Sutra and attack them with swords and staves. This is Myolo. The arrogance and presumption of members of the Buddhist clergy, or arrogant priests. These are priests with perverse wisdom and hearts that are fawning and crooked, who, though failing to understand Buddhism, boast they have attained the Buddhist truth and slander the sutra's practitioners. 3, the arrogance and presumption of those who pretend to be sages, or arrogant false sages. The third category is described as priests who pretend to be sages and who are revered as such, but when encountering the practitioners of the Lotus Sutra become fearful of losing fame or profit and induce secular authorities to persecute them. In On the Words and Phrases, Myolo states, of these three, the first can be endured, the second exceeds the first, and the third one is the most formidable of all. This is because the second and third ones are increasingly harder to recognize for what they really are. In summary, Nichiren called them the three powerful enemies and identified himself as the votary, or true practitioner, of the Lotus Sutra because he was subjected to slander, attacked with swords and staves, and sent into exile twice by the authorities, just as prophesied in the sutra. In his treatise on the opening of the eyes, he says, at such a time, if the three powerful enemies predicted in the Lotus Sutra did not appear, then who would believe in the words of the Buddha? If it were not for Nichiren, who could fulfill the Buddha's prophecies concerning the votary of the Lotus Sutra? So we go through this shit because it's already been predicted that we will, and subsequently we do it without regret, without begrudging our lives. Okay? Enlightened one. What is an enlightened one? Also, awakened one. Okay, so an enlightened one is an awakened one. What have you awakened? The mind king, okay, of the Dharma body, okay? A Buddha, that's what enlightened one is. One who is enlightened to the ultimate truth or principle of life and the universe. What is that as we know it in the latter day of the law? Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. That's why Nichiren says, now Nichiren and his followers, we're all Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, not thus come ones. We're all Nam-myoho Renge-kyo Buddhists.
Right.
Okay? This is from President Ikeda, and I am going to go ahead and no, I'm going to skip it. I'll read it when we come back. Okay, next one. Renge. also called the Oriental lotus. What's the significance of Renge? The simultaneity of cause and effect. Okay? I'm going to skip Tentai and Myolo and all that other stuff. I'm going to go straight to Nichiren. Nichiren refers to the lotus plant as symbolizing the simultaneous nature of cause and effect. In a letter to the lay nun Ueno, he states, "Thus there are all manner of plants, but the lotus is the only one that bears flowers and fruit simultaneously. The benefit of all of the other sutras is uncertain because they teach that one must first make good causes, become a good person, and only then can they become a Buddha at some later time. With regard to the Lotus Sutra, when one's hand takes it up, that hand immediately attains Buddhahood. And when one's mouth chants it, that mouth is itself a Buddha. As, for example, the moon is reflected in the water the moment it appears from behind the eastern mountains, or as a sound and its echo arise simultaneously." And again, when he says the Lotus Sutra, but we've heard so far every time he says Lotus Sutra, it refers to the Lotus Sutra. He qualifies the sutra is in the latter day, is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay? 5. In the entity of the mystic law, Nichiren states the Buddha, who is the entity of Myoho Renge-kyo of the lifespan chapter of the essential teaching, who is both inhabiting subject and inhabited realm, life in the environment, body and mind, entity and function, the Buddha eternally endowed with the three bodies, which he says we are. He is to be found, only to be found in the disciples and lay believers of Nichiren. Okay? So when we talk about the entity of the law, or a Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, thus come one, it's only those of us that believe Nichiren's teaching and practice and make our advent as Buddhists. We're all supposed to be teachers of the law. Okay, and that's what we need going into the next period with President Ikeda gone and having gone take a nap in Ku. Okay, we're supposed to teach others the correct understanding. Okay, if you haven't studied, you can't really believe that you have it. If you've just read President Ikeda's lectures, that's not deep enough. That is not adequate, and that's not what he limits it to. He did those more general lectures for people of all capacities. Now you're talking about, you got to have the capacity of the Buddha, man. That doesn't just suddenly come in as an injection of wisdom. You develop that wisdom. You develop that wisdom based on your faith, which requires you to not begrudge your life, and to study your ass off and to understand what you're talking about, and to be willing to speak it, to not be afraid to speak it, to be so confident that you are the Buddha that you have no fear in anything.
Yes.
Okay. Such persons embody the true entity of Myoho Renge-kyo, he says. He finishes it off here. Again, further. Thus the, okay, I'll have to read all this. No, I'm not going to go to. No, this is all going to happen from the 16th chapter. Okay, I'll go to the key part here, the punchline. Okay, as he's explaining in chapter 16, which we're going to read in 2 chapters after we're done today, in December. He says, these three bodies, because he's talking about the three bodies inherent, eternally inherent, right? Okay. These three bodies are our own single bodies. So he qualifies again. The three bodies are us as entities possessing the Dharma body, the reward body, and the manifested body. Okay? Thus, the Buddha of these three bodies are our own single bodies. This is why Words and Phrases, Volume 9 says the single body is none other than the three bodies a statement that is secret. That's why it might not be known to everyone that consider themselves a Buddhist or even a disciple of Shakyamuni. Okay? The single body is none other than the three bodies, a statement that is secret. And this is also why it says the three bodies are none other than the single body, a statement that is secret. Thus, the body of the lotus, that is the entity of the law, chapter 11.6, we've already read it, who is eternally endowed with the three bodies, is Nichiren and his disciples and lay supporters. That is because they embraced the title of honor, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. And that's when he said that's why you are rightfully referred to as Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, thus come ones. All right? That was from the Treasure Tower chapter. Okay. That was heavy stuff there. All right. Let's see, what am I saying, talking about? Oh, the Buddha of limitless joy. I qualified myself to also be a Buddha of limitless joy. Nichiren's a Buddha of limitless joy. Anybody that is perceived through their daimoku, through their practice of the teaching of Nichiren, the realization that they are the original possessors of the three bodies, exactly as he teaches, exactly as I just read to you, okay? They are the thus come one of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. There's no separation. There's not just one. We all equal. Riko Soku, whatever you remember he said. So again, everybody is a Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, thus come one. They all have that potentiality. Is it dormant or is it manifest? Nichiren just identified the doctrine of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life as the law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo that he realized within his own life. In other words, Nichiren established two concepts of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. One is Tentai, as it was taught in the Tendai school that he grew up in, which is predicated on the Lotus and Nirvana Sutra. One is Tentai's, and the other his own. His own. This is from Nichiren Daishonin's enlightenment, not from any other source. He's the original teacher. That's why I say it's not from any other source. And when he was in his original state, I don't necessarily think he had the name Nichiren. Just like I'm not going to carry my name Tom into my next existence, for sure. Okay, I'm going to be something else. I'm going to be somebody else. We always are. I might be born in a different country. It would be completely inappropriate to be called Tom. They'd go, what the hell is a Tom? Right? No, it's always in keeping with the karma that we create. Yeah. And the challenge is we take a vow to fulfill. I love this stuff. Okay. Nichiren identified the doctrine of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life as the law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo he realized within his own life. In other words, Nichiren established two concepts of the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. One is Tentai's, the other his own. In his treatment of illness, Nichiren writes, there are two ways of perceiving the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. One is theoretical and the other actual. What Tentai and Dingyo practiced was theoretical, but what I practice now is actual. Because what I practice is superior, the difficulties attending it are that much greater. Tons of Sancho Shima. The doctrine of Tentai and Dingyo was the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life of the theoretical teaching, while mine is that of the essential teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. These two are as different as heaven is from earth. Tentai established the doctrine of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life based on the true aspect of all phenomena, the phrase from the Expedient Means second chapter of the Lotus Sutra. On the other hand, Nichiren states in the opening of the eyes, the doctrine of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life is found in only one place, hidden in the depths of the lifespan chapter of the essential teaching of the Lotus Sutra. Nagarjuna and Vasubandhu were aware of it but did not bring it forth into the light. Tentai Chiche alone embraced it and kept it ever in mind. What Tentai embraced and kept ever in mind does not refer to the doctrine of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life that he expounded publicly. Nichiren regarded it as Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. And then he gets into Nichikan and Nichikan's qualifying the inseparability of the person and the law. Nichikan, the 26th high priest, chief priest of Taisekaji, is known for his commentaries on Nichiren's writings. It's the Gohon, his interpretation of the Gohonzon is what we chant to now in the latter day as members associated with the Soka Gakkai. Interpreted Nichiren's teaching saying that the Buddha of the essential teaching is not the eternal Buddha, but the Buddha who attained enlightenment at a fixed point in time. He's talking about the essential teaching of the Lotus Sutra. Okay? Numberless major world system, dust particle kalpas. So Nichikan says it's not Shakyamuni. Okay? He's not the eternal Buddha, but the Buddha who attained enlightenment at a fixed point in time. Numberless major world system, dust particle kalpas ago. From this viewpoint, the Buddha of the essential teaching is not eternally endowed with the three bodies, and thus cannot convey that to his disciples in a single moment of life in their present form. Okay? He couldn't do Buddha in his present form. All right? Okay. But is rather the Buddha who advanced to the state of limitless joy through the Bodhisattva way, thereby acquiring the three bodies through Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. In contrast, Nichikan stated that the Buddha who embodies eternal life, endowed with the 10 worlds and the law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, whereby all Buddhas attained enlightenment, according to Nichiren's teaching, is originally endowed with the three bodies since time without beginning, and that Buddha is what Nichiren called the Buddha of beginningless time. We've read that definition before, right? Nichikan concluded that Nichiren embodied that Buddha, okay? And now, different or separate from Nichikan's interpretation, is Nichiren clearly states his followers, not just the priests of the Nikko school, okay? The Nikko, Nichiren Shoshu, all right? Is everybody with me?
Yes.
All right. Point 1 on the beginning and end of the Jigage section. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says the word since, G, which means the self, this may be the, hang on, this is, I think, the Buddha beget of limitless joy. Point 15, no, this is not. No, it is the Buddha beginningless joy, okay. Okay, point 19 on the words, at all times I think to myself, literally make this thought. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says at all times designates the three existences of past, present, and future. Myself refers specifically to Shakyamuni Buddha, and in a more general way to the 10 worlds, which, okay, the words his thoughts in the phrase make this thought refer to the eternally inherent single thought of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, which couldn't occur in the former or the middle day of the law. All right, the word make here is to not make, is not the make of made or created, but rather the make of not made or not created, that is eternal and inherent. Kuan, okay? The make of Kuan. Broadly speaking, in terms of the inherent 10 worlds, the word myself refers to each of the 10,000 entities of those worlds. This thought indicates that the voices of the hell wardens, as they berate the inmates of hell, as well as the other various thoughts of living beings, all of them are expressions of the wisdom of the Buddha of limitless joy. All of these are referred in the single word thought. Now the thought expressed by Nichiren and his followers as they chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the thought of great pity and compassion. They are all Buddhas of limitless joy. I'm going next. The ones that have made themselves equal to him. The parable of the phantom city. This is from all the recap. All 28 chapters are Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, because this is the phantom city of the wonderful law, it represents the fact that the 10 worlds are all at the same time impermanent, which we're going to get into what I'm going to read. Because it is, right? Everything is impermanent.
Right.
Nothing, non-substantiality is the base of everything, really. We come out of non-substantiality as a new configuration of the temporary gathering of the 5 components, right? That's how we become entities. We enter extinction, which is not extinction. It looks like we died, but we're eternal. All we do is go to Ku, go hang out with Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, thus come once, okay, and come back out whenever we want to, all right? Because it is the phantom city, okay. It represents the fact that the 10 worlds are all at the same time impermanent. Because it is the phantom city of Renge, the lotus, it represents the fact that the 10 worlds and the 3,000 realms open up and fall like blossoms. We all are born and then pass into what seems like extinction. But both impermanence and the quality of being eternal and immutable characterize the complex reality of Myoho Renge Kyo. The phantom city and the place where the treasure is, chapter 7, represent the fact that birth and death are inherent in life itself. The entity of which birth and death are an innate part is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Our entity is the law of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Thus, a commentary, Great Concentration and Insight, Volume 5 says, arising is the arising of the Dharma nature, and extinction is the extinction of that nature, because my mouth doesn't work after I die. Okay? Next. This is the point 3 from this is the 27 important, chapter 16. This is from the lifespan chapter. Okay, we're going to get here in December. He says, point 3, but good men, it has been immeasurable, boundless, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, millions of nyotas of kalpas since I in fact attained Buddhahood. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, I in fact is explaining that Shakyamuni in fact attained Buddhahood in the inconceivably remote past. The meaning of this chapter, however, is that I represents the living beings of the Dharma realm. All the living beings that exist. I here refers to each and every being in the 10 worlds. In fact, establishes that I is a Buddha eternally endowed with the 3 bodies. Eternally, that means kuan. This is what is being called fact. Attain refers both to the one who attains and the thing attained. Attain means to open or reveal. It is to reveal the original state. It is to reveal that the beings of the Dharma realm are Buddhas, eternally endowed with the 3 bodies. Buddhahood means becoming or being enlightened to this. So why am I going overkill on this? We're going to take a month off. I want you to chant about all this stuff I'm saying. If there's any doubt in your mind about the fact of, this is the teaching. In the word sense, irai, the element I, already or having passed, refers to the past, and the element rai, coming, refers to the future. And the present is included in the 2 elements of irai. So past, present, and future are all one thing. All right? Because they're all karmically linked. You can't have present without past. You can't have future without present. The passage is thus saying that I, or the beings of the Dharma realm, which is everything everywhere, in fact revealed the Buddhahood that is immeasurable and boundless in both past and future. It is referring to the 100 worlds and 1,000 factors and the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. So it's referring to all the insentient beings as well as all the sentient beings. It's the Dharma realm. Everything in the Dharma realm is a living being, right? Okay, it doesn't have to breathe to be a living being. It is part of the Dharma realm. It supports the life of the ones that do breathe. It is referring to the 100 worlds and 1,000 factors and 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. The two words 100 and 1,000 in the sutra refer to the 100 worlds and 1,000 factors. These then represent the reality of the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. Now, Nichiren and his followers who chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo are the original lords of teachings of the lifespan chapter. That's why I always say we're the original disciples of the original teacher who became enlightened to the original state. All right? Generally speaking, the bodhisattvas of the theoretical teaching are not the sort of persons who are qualified to handle this chapter, for they employ an approach in which the theoretical teaching is on the surface and the essential teaching is in the background. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is in the background, while Nichiren and his followers employ an approach in which the essential teaching is in the forefront, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo first, and the theoretical teaching is in the background. Be that as it may, this chapter does not represent the teaching that is essential for the latter day of the law. He's talking about the 16th chapter of the Lotus Sutra. The reason is that this chapter embodies the Buddhism of the harvest, which is what this is, suitable for the time when the Buddha was in the world. But only the 5 characters of the Daimoka constitute the Buddhism of sowing that is suitable for the present time. Thus, the Buddhism of the harvest is for the time when the Buddha was in the world, and the Buddhism of sowing is for the time after his passing. Hence, it is the Buddhism of sowing that is needed in the latter day of the law right now, right? We only have 2 more, and then we're going to be reading right through those 2 chapters you watch. The oneness and the purpose of the oneness of the person in the law. I believe I already read this somehow in some other aspect of this, but I will anyhow. Let me finish it. The principle established by Nichikan, the 26th high chief priest of Taisakaji Temple in Japan, with regard to Nichiren's teaching, indicating that the object of devotion in terms of the person and the object of devotion in terms of the law are one in their essence. Nichiren and Nam-myoho Renge-kyo are one in their essence, just as we are. The law is inseparable from the person and vice versa. The Treasure Tower, 11th chapter of the Lotus Sutra states, if one upholds this sutra, one will be upholding the Buddha's body. Okay, and then we already heard him say, but this school says outside of our own bodies, there is no Buddha. That's what he adds there in the chapter 12. If one upholds this sutra, one will be upholding the Buddha's body. This means that the Lotus Sutra is the Buddha's body. That is, the Buddha, person, and the teaching law he expounded are one and inseparable. Nichiren revealed and spread the law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and inscribed it in the form of a mandala known as the Gohonzon to enable all people in the latter day of the law to attain Buddhahood. For this reason, he is regarded as the Buddha of the latter day of the law. This is the object of devotion in terms of the law, or the physical embodiment of the eternal and intrinsic law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo that exists within us, that Nichiren realized and manifested within his own life, and because he left that object of devotion, we do the same thing. That's why we can become Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, thus come ones ourselves in this lifetime. Okay? Pardon me. Okay. Hence, Nichiren is the object of devotion in terms of the person. In his reply to Kyo, that's why when I'm in front of the Gohonzon, I'm having a conversation with my original teacher. It isn't with anybody else. It's not with anybody that came after. It's the original state, the original teacher, the Buddha of the latter day. That's who I perceive in the Gohonzon. Okay? Nothing more, nothing less than that. Because that's what allows me to be who I am and be the Buddha. Okay? If I had to be good or an example for the rest of the world, I'd never make it in this lifetime. Okay? Neither would many other people. All right? So when you create your heroes, always realize that the hero at the top of the pyramid is the Daishonin, because the Daishonin and Nam-myoho Renge-kyo are one. Okay, and that's the basis of our understanding and teaching. That's why we chanted that Gohonzon. If we didn't believe or understand that, if that wasn't a part of the teaching, we would be doing Shakyamuni like Nichiren Shu.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the problem. The other schools, almost all of them, think that this is all still about the Buddhism of the harvest. They don't have this. They didn't have a Nikko Shonin. They didn't have a Nichimoku Shonin that passed it on. Okay? Or a Tom that's continuing to.
Right.
All right? Or a Daisaku Ikeda for that matter. Or a Josei Toda. You know, when Daisaku Ikeda says, you know, if everybody else quits, I'll do Kosen Rufu. He's repeating exactly what President Toda said.
Yeah.
That quote really was originated from President Toda, okay? And in fact, we all should be saying that. That is our vow.
Yes.
That is the vow that we said we would uphold no matter what,
No matter what.
okay? And according to the teaching, as Bodhisattvas of the earth, we never fail to fulfill that vow. We maintain that to the end of our life. That's why we go to the ninth consciousness to hang out with the rest of the Nam-myoho Renge-kyo that's come ones, the Buddhas that exist in reality. Okay?
We don't give up.
Right. Okay. I don't know where I'm at right now, so I'm just going to go back a little bit. This means that the Lotus Sutra is the Buddha's body, that is, the Buddha person and the teaching law he expounded are one and inseparable. Nichiren revealed and spread the law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and inscribed it in the form of a mandala known as the Gohonzon to enable all people of latter day, that's us, to attain Buddhahood in their present form. And for this reason, he was regarded as the Buddha of latter day law. This is the object of devotion in terms of the law, or the physical embodiment of the eternal and intrinsic law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, that Nichiren realized and manifested within his own life. Wow, I reread all that. Hence, Nichiren is the object of devotion in terms of the person. In his reply to Kyo, Nichiren writes, and that's why I speak to Nichiren, because it says it right here. Nichiren writes, and the soul of Nichiren is nothing other than Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. This means that Nichiren realized Nam-myoho Renge-kyo as the origin and basis of his life and embodied it as a mandala. Nichiren also writes in the same reply, I, Nichiren, have inscribed my life in Sumi ink, so believe in the Gohonzon with your whole heart. Ultimately, Nichiren's life embodied in the principle of the oneness of person and law, as does the Gohonzon, the object of devotion he established. Lastly, oh, and I accidentally negated it, so I just erased it. Here we go. Chapter 12, Devadatta. I don't have to go there because, Karen, the law that is without self is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay, and it's not separate from any of us that embrace the Gohonzon, and especially the Daishonin. That's why we never disobey. Chapter 13, Encouraging Devotion, 13 important points. Point 1 on page 109 of the orally transmitted teachings. The record of the orally transmitted teachings says the word encouraging refers to the converting of others. The word devotion refers to one's own practice. We have to not only master this ourselves, we also have to teach others, right? That's part of the deal. Faith, practice, and study, right? Nam-myoho Renge-kyo embraces both the converting of others and one's own religious practice. Now, Nichiren and his followers are encouraging others to adopt Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and make it their own practice, okay? So a lot of these are going to just be, these are all declaratives. You go straight into the record of the orally transmitted teaching. Each one of these is for the Bodhisattvas of the earth, okay? Point 2, on the words never begrudging our bodies or lives. In the passage, but although it will be difficult to teach and convert them, we will summon up the power of great patience and will read and recite this sutra, embrace, preach, and copy it, offering it many kinds of alms and never begrudging our bodies or lives. That's the Bodhisattvas in that chapter making their vow, right? He's going to say, you guys don't get to do it. The record of the orally, 110. The record of the, page 110. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says the word bodies refer, because he's already told us this, refer to the element of form or the body. The word lives refers to the element of the mind. Body and mind cannot be separated, right? One should never be begrudging one's body or life, either in principle or in fact. So his teaching is that no matter what, even at the cost of your own life, like I said, Nichimoku Shonen is a great example. He died doing shakubuku. Okay, who else can you think of that would be an example of? Let me finish it. When a votary of the Lotus Sutra is deprived of his lands and fields, this is a case of not begrudging body or life in principle, which most of us, that's all we ever have to do. But when he is actually deprived of his life, he loses his life for the sake of the law. This is the case of not begrudging body or life in fact. Now when Nichiren and his followers chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, they are being unbegrudging of their bodies and lives in both principle and in fact. That means that we are not afraid to die for the sake of the law. Now who else did that? Who inspired the Daigo Honzon? Who wrote the book on this aspect? Because Nichiren it never happened to him. He got out of every one of those issues. Every one of his disciples that died protecting him would fall into this category of in fact. Okay, so the Asahara persecution, the three martyrs that inspired the inscription in the Daigo Honzon, supposedly, right? All right, so bottom line, we don't let anything stop us. If they say, I'm going to put you in prison, we go, good deal. Please, thank you. Make it easy for me, because doing this isn't easy. All right? Point 3 on the passage, because in this Sahe world, the people are given to corruption and evil, beset by overbearing arrogance, shallow in blessings, irascible, muddled, fawning, and devious, and their hearts are not sincere. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, regarding the phrase, their hearts are not sincere, to take the Lotus Sutra, which says among those sutras, the lotus is foremost, chapter 10, the teacher of the law, and put it in third place, to regard the third place, semicolon, to regard the sutra as the lowest when it says among all sutras, it holds the highest place, chapter 23, Medicine King, to say that the principle of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life embodied in the Lotus Sutra is found in the Flower Garland or the Mahayavachana Sutras, to take the doctrine of attaining Buddhahood in one's present form and read it into the Mahayavachana Sutra. These are all examples of a heart not being sincere. Now, what is he referring to? True Word and the Flower Garland ripped off the concepts, okay, of the Lotus Sutra and incorporated them, inserted them into the Flower Garland Sutra and the Mahayavachana Sutra, so that supposedly they can also achieve Buddhahood in their present form based on a false teaching. And that Daishonin is saying, I studied all this, they ripped it off. Okay, it's not there. It was added. Okay, now Nichiren and his followers who chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo do with hearts that are sincere. We don't believe those other sutras saying that they have that ability. We believe Nichiren saying, no, it was ripped off. Okay? Point 4, on the passage at that time, the bodhisattvas respectfully complying with the Buddha's will and at the same time wishing to fulfill their own original vows. These are all, again, the bodhisattvas of Shakyamuni, proceeded in the presence of the Buddha to roar the lion's roar and to make a vow. I just said, when we did this, read the synopsis, it said all those 800,000, there's a bazillion of them that all did this at the same time. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says to comply with the Lotus Sutra is what is meant by respectfully complying with the Buddha's will. By the Buddha's will is meant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Now when Nichiren and his followers chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, it means they are respectfully complying with the Buddha's will. Okay? We're doing the same thing as those guys that made the vows in the presence of the Buddha at the treasure tower in the ceremony in the air. All right? Point 5. We don't have to go through all that stuff because those bodhisattvas couldn't attain Buddhahood in their present form. Okay? They weren't being taught the essential teaching. They were being taught the essential teaching of the Lotus Sutra. All right? Chapter 5, on the words to roar, the lions roar, Sashibiku. All right, now this is something that President Kate has repeated a million times. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says the lions roar, Shishiku, is the preaching of the Buddha. That's the Buddha, the enlightened one. All right? The preaching of the law means preaching of the Lotus Sutra or preaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in particular. The first shi is of the word shishi or lion, which means teacher, is the wonderful law that is passed on by the teacher. The second shi, which means child, is the wonderful law as it is received by the disciples. The roar is the sound of the teacher and the disciples chanting in unison, being one, no separation between the teacher and the disciples. The verb sa, to make or to roar, should be understood to mean to initiate or to put forth. It refers to the initiating of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in the latter day of the law. That's exactly what we're doing. Okay, so that just described us. Point 6, on the passage world one, honored one, after the thus come one has entered extinction, we will travel here and there, back and forth, through the worlds of the 10 directions. What did the Daishonin tell us the 10 worlds of the 10 directions means? It means the 10 worlds. Okay, we go through from hell to enlightenment, right? Yeah. We have all 10 worlds in our lives. So as to enable living beings to have something in common with the people that aren't exactly us, so as to enable living beings to copy this sutra, because we have it, to receive and embrace and read and recite and understand and preach its principles, because we teach them. Okay? Practice it in accordance with the law and properly keep it in their thoughts. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, Nichiren says, those who practice it in accord with the law are the great teachers Tentai, Myolo, Dengyo, and their like. All of those Tendai teachers. Now, when Nichiren and his followers chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, because those guys were from the middle day of the law, right? Yeah. Now when Nichiren and his followers chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, they practice it in accordance with the law. All right? It's not a different thing. It's a different time.
Right.
Okay? It's a different teacher. Point 9.
No, point 7.
Pardon me. Point 7. Thank you. You can tell how well I'm paying attention. Okay, point 7. On the words, there will be many ignorant people who will curse and speak ill of us. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says this refers to those great oafs who do not understand even one word of the teachings. It is perfectly clear that they curse and speak ill of us. The word many here refers to such oafs in the country of Japan. Okay, so if you're a disciple of Nichiren in the same fashion that I am, anybody that speaks ill of you is frankly a great oaf. Okay, because they're not entitled to decide that they're smart enough to do that. All right, point 8, on the passage, in the great age there will be monks with perverse wisdom and hearts that are fawning and crooked, who will suppose they have attained what they have not attained, being proud and boastful in heart. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says the evil age referred to in this passage on monks of an evil age is the latter day of the law. The monks are persons like Kobo and others who slander the law. Kobo is true word, right? They cast aside the correct wisdom embodied in the Lotus Sutra and instead base themselves on the perverse wisdom of the provisional teachings. The Hebrachana Sutra. Now Nietzsche and his followers who chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo represent the correct wisdom in its highest form. Correct wisdom in its highest form. Continuing, point 9, page 112. On the passage where there will be forest-dwelling monks wearing clothing of patched rags and living in retirement, they will claim they are practicing the true way, despising and looking down on all humankind. Well, by the way, you guys know we're now reading the 20-line verse. Or the 20 line verse. That from the encouraging devotion, you know, if you read this is like, okay. Who will claim they are practicing the true way, despising and looking down on all humankind, greedy for the profit and support. They will preach the law to white-robed laymen. When we read the synopsis, you remember that it says this, and will be respected and revered by the world as though they were arhats who possess the 6 transcendental powers. These men with evil in their hearts, constantly thinking of worldly affairs, will borrow the name of forest-dwelling monks and take delight in proclaiming our faults, saying things like, these monks are greedy for profit and support, and therefore they preach non-Buddhist doctrines, because we preach the teaching of Nichiren, and fabricate their own scriptures. They'll say we're just fabricating scriptures rather than perceiving them correctly as we've been taught to by the original teacher, to delude the people of the world. Now Nichiren says, the record of the orally transmitted teachings says, this refers to the third of the 3 powerful enemies who persecute the votaries of the Lotus Sutra, men like Ryokan. Okay, he already mentioned Kobo, now he's going to say Ryokan. Thus such persons are regarded as though they were arhats who possess the 6 transcendental powers. He's just explaining, here are the living examples that you can look at for the 3 powerful enemies. Point 10, on the words, these monks fabricate their own scriptures to delude the people of the world. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, Nichiren says, this passage of the sutra shows how arrogant monks slander the votaries of the Lotus Sutra, accusing them of fabricating this sutra and reading it to others. So in other words, we're attacked by the other schools as not knowing what we're doing and creating all kinds of slander in doing so. But in reality, we're the true disciples of the original teacher, and we're doing exactly what we've been instructed because we never disobey. All right? Because we always obey, I should say. Or because you never disobey me. We get to preach the law. This is fun. Point 11, on the passage. Though they treat us with contempt, saying, oh, you are all no doubt Buddhas, as the Daishonin has just declared over and over and over again, we are. All such words of arrogance and contempt we will endure and accept. We don't give a shit when people don't believe us when we say we're Buddhists. It's not up to them. They're not smart enough to know if they don't perceive that we are. They don't know the teaching for sure. All right? The record of the orally transmitted teachings, Nichiren says, this passage of the sutra illustrates how such monks will treat votaries of the Lotus Sutra with contempt, calling them living Buddhas. Though through their contentious attitude, they commit slander. They commit slander. Through their contentious attitude, they commit slander. You criticize my butt, you committed slander. I'm sorry. It's a fact. And I'm not saying I'm anything anybody else isn't, because it says everybody is. But you better not say that I'm not. Okay? All right. Calling them living Buddhists, through their contentious attitude, they commit slander. Now, Nichiren and his followers who chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo are spoken of in this manner. That's why my feelings aren't hurt. That's why I feel sorry for you, because I know you slandered the law and you're going to receive it, cause and effect for that. I don't have to even worry about it. May those who vex and trouble the practitioners of the law have their heads split in 7 pieces. It's right there on the Gohonzon on the right side. Point 12, on the passage, evil demons will take possession of others, and through them curse, revile, and heap shame on us. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says the evil demons are persons such as Honan and Kobo. Now, who's Honan? Amida. Okay, Nimbutsu. Okay, so he's talking about the three major guys that brought in True Word, Amida, Nimbutsu, True Word, Nimbutsu, and stealing the thing so that the flower garlands got all that in a bag of chips. Okay? Take possession of others means they will exercise their influence over the ruler, the high ministers, the people of the country. It is referring to the hatred that such persons bear towards Nichiren and his followers who chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo now. A demon is one who snatches away the life of others and who snatches away blessings. The Lotus Sutra is the life source of the Buddhas of the three existences of past, present, and future. What did he say by saying that? Everybody attains Buddhahood through Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. This, because the sutra in the latter day of the law is Nam Myoho, the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. It's not this. All right? That's for the former and the middle day. This sutra is sacred, is a sacred writing, and contains within it the blessings of all the bodhisattvas. Point 13, and we're done with encouraging devotion. On the passage, we care nothing for our bodies or lives, but are anxious only for the unsurpassed way. Do not begrudge your life. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, the unsurpassed way is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Now, Nichiren and his followers are even more anxious with regard to Nam Myoho Renge Kyo than they are with regard to their own lives. That is why at the conclusion of this chapter we find the words, the Buddha must know what is in our hearts. That is, Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings, must know and understand what is in the hearts of the votaries of the Lotus Sutra. The Buddha referred to in the conclusion of the chapter is Shakyamuni, and our hearts refers to the hearts of Nichiren and his followers who now chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, which was hidden in the depths of the Lotus Sutra. Okay, you understand the connection there. It's not the former or the middle day, it's the latter day. Okay? Chapter 14, Peaceful Practices, and we're done with the theoretical teaching of the Lotus Sutra, of the orally transmitted teachings, excuse me. Whew. Okay, so that's why if I die because of a heart condition, like overextending myself trying to clarify and teach this, don't worry about me. I bet if you look closely, I have a grin on my face. I'm dead serious. I have fantasies about this.
All right.
Giving your life for the law is the ultimate benefit maker that you could ever have. Okay? You are set. Oh my gosh. You will not, you're a badass if you do that. You're a badass if you do that. Okay. It's to my friend Frank Roberts, who is a badass Buddha too. Point 1, concerning the peaceful practices chapter. This is page 115. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, concerning the peaceful practices of the Lotus Sutra of the Wonderful Law, and the practices carried out by Nichiren and his followers now in the latter day of the law, you should understand that when one practices the Lotus Sutra under such circumstances, difficulties will arise, and these are to be looked on as peaceful practices. Okay? So basically, this whole thing is not for us. Okay, point 2. On the passage next, the Bodhisattva or Mahasattva should view all phenomena as empty. This is important for you to understand. That being their true identity. All right. On point 2, next, the Bodhisattva or Mahasattva should view all phenomena, that includes us, right? All phenomena as empty. That being their true nature. What is emptiness? non-substantiality, right? Okay, so we should all view non-substantiality as our true entity. Why? Because that's the state we all always return to over and over and over again after it seems that we've passed into extinction. When we've temporarily gathered as the temporary gathering of the five components, when we die, they separate. The mind goes to the ninth consciousness if you're a Buddha. Okay, but everything else then goes into a little rebuff, I guess, a machine shop. And it, when it comes out again, it's going to be reflective of who you were in your previous existences. Okay, so if we want to know about our true identity, don't think of yourself as Tom. Okay, because that's very, very short-lived, short-lived, however you want to pronounce it. Okay, that's not eternal. The nature, the essence of Tom is eternal. The Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, thus come one of Tom, that is being expressed in this lifetime as Tom, okay, is eternal, okay? But in reality, when I die, I'm going back into non-substantiality and I'm going to boogie. I'm going to party, okay? They do not turn upside down, do not move, do not regress, do not revolve. They are like empty space without innate nature, because the five components have been separated. Without innate nature, beyond the reach of all words, they are not born, do not emerge, do not arise. They are without name, without form, without true being, because they haven't manifest again as a temporary gathering of the five components when they're in the state of non-substantiality. All right? They are without volume, without limits, without hindrances, without barriers. That's why they can do whatever they want. All right? The record of the orally transmitted teaching says this passage lists the 18 aspects of emptiness or non-substantiality. The substance represented by the 18 aspects of emptiness is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Every one of these 18 aspects is a description of the wonderful law. That's why this isn't a bad thing. This is a totally cool thing. Without limits, without hindrance, without barriers, I can dig it. All right? There's only a few. We're almost done. We're basically done. Point 3. Is everybody clear?
Yep.
All right. On the passage, if he is asked difficult questions, he should not reply in terms of the law of the lesser vehicle, so that he should explain things solely in terms of the great vehicle, so that people will be able to acquire wisdom. Pardon me. Okay, what is the great vehicle? Now we're going to say Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, but traditionally it was Mahayana versus Hinayana. The lesser vehicle is Hinayana, the greater vehicle, okay. All right, and since this is coming from the Lotus Sutra, okay, he's talking about Mahayana, but now that we're in the latter day of the law, we understand that the great vehicle is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. All right, he should explain things solely in terms of the great vehicle, so that people will be able to acquire wisdom, embracing all species. Okay, wisdom embracing all species. Why is that the greatest wisdom? Because if you embrace all species, then you're embracing the entire Dharma realm and you're seeing everything as equal to yourself. You're a Buddha. Good for you, baby. Page 116. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, when one is refuting slanderers of the law, one should not use the provisional teachings in an attempt to enlighten them. Okay, don't shoju them, shakabuku them. When the wisdom embracing all species is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. When you perceive Nam-myoho Renge-kyo for what it is, you perceive everything as Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. All refers to the 10,000 things And the wisdom embracing all species refers to the wisdom underlying all the different species of the 10,000 things, which is Myoho Renge-kyo. Or again, we may say that the wisdom embracing all species is the single mind within us all. The mind core, the mind king, the Nam-myoho Renge-kyo that exists in everything. Okay? All living beings have that same potentiality. It's either manifest or it's not. It's either diluted or it's enlightened. Okay? The single mind is the one great entity. If you think of it that way, it's the one great entity embracing all the 10,000 phenomena. Everything's got it. You should think about this, which I have, and I hope you will while you're taking your month off in November and you're chanting Daimoku. Think about the things that we've been talking about. Embrace them in a way so that you're able to, you can say the same thing without thinking twice. You have the same confidence I'm speaking with. All right? Point 4. On the passage, after I have passed into extinction, if there are monks who are able to expound this one Lotus Sutra of the wonderful law, their minds will be free of jealousy and anger or of all worry and hindrance. No one will trouble them, curse or revile them. They will know no fear, no attacks by swords or staff, nor will they ever be banished. This is point 4. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, this passage of the sutra states that the bodhisattvas of the theoretical teaching will not suffer any attacks by sword or staff. In the encouraging devotion chapter, speaking of the votaries of the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law, it says there will be many people, ignorant people, who will curse and speak ill of us and will attack us with swords and staves. Because there's a conflict between encouraging devotion and peaceful practices. Because encouraging devotion says we'll take all the shit, and encouraging and peaceful practices says it's going to be all that in a bag of chips, right? That would seem to be in conflict. Now he's going to explain it. In the encouraging devotion chapter, speaking of the votaries of the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law, it says there will be many people, ignorant people, they just don't know the truth, right, who will curse and speak ill of us and attack with swords and staves. It also says again and again we will be banished. But in the present chapter, it says that these troubles will not occur. This is because the encouraging devotion chapter is speaking of those who carry out the practice of Shakabuku method in the latter day of the law, while the present chapter is speaking of those who carry out the practice of Shoju method in the middle day of the law. Tentai, Dengyo, Myolo, right? Chang'an. All of those guys that were in that correct Nagarjuna, okay? None of them had to go through the stuff that Nichiren did. That he's explaining why. In that age, you didn't. No. You got to be a king. You got to be born as a king. You got to be like all of them. None of them were like blue-collar workers, right? We are all blue-collar workers. Point 5, on the passage, if they are in a settlement or town or in a quiet and deserted place or a forest, and people come and want to ask them difficult questions, the heavenly beings, day and night, and I can't believe I got this done in 2 hours. The heavenly beings, day and night, will, for the sake of the law, constantly guard and protect them and will cause all the listeners to rejoice. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, as for the votaries of the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law, the heavenly beings will surely guard and protect them. The law doesn't mean that they're not going to be disrespected and persecuted. It just means that the heavenly beings will surely, again, Hachiman, everybody, the sun goddess, everybody that's on the Gohonzon, those influences are still going to be around you, even though you're having to do the dirty work of the latter day.
Right.
Okay? To be the Buddha in your present form. As for the votaries of the Lotus Sutra and the latter day of the law, the heavenly beings will surely guard and protect them. The law referred to in the words will for the sake of the law constantly guard and protect them is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Thank you, and we're done. That finishes the theoretical first half of the Lotus Sutra. We'll take up the essential teaching of the Lotus of the orally transmitted teachings when we come back in December. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.